We are now officially being recorded, and I think we should just go ahead and get started. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to AASHTO's Council on Public Transportation and MTAP 2020 virtual winter meeting. I'm welcoming you back, and just a few housekeeping items. If you are not one of the co-facilitators and you're not at the moment speaking, please keep yourself on mute. And if possible, even turn off your video so we can determine who's speaking, who's not speaking. It's all based on the video will highlight those who are speaking. And again, the other thing I ask is everyone, since this is a discussion, a co-facilitated discussion, I encourage excessive use of the chat, not only to submit questions, but to make comments. Also, since it is Zoom, you are allowed to turn on and off your mic as you'd like, and we encourage that. Again, so since this is a discussion, there's not going to really be a presentation per se. I would encourage you to do that. And now I'm going to turn it over to our facilitator, Jennifer DeBrule, Vice Chair of MTAP and Chief of Public Transportation for the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. Jennifer.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon here in Virginia. Sorry for the bright sunshine over my shoulder. It's that time of day here. Thank everybody for coming back and joining us for session number 8, our third session of the day today. I'm really excited to dive into this topic that we have ahead of us this afternoon. So I see that Richard has all of us very well trained by session 8. I'm seeing lots of virtual roll call happening in the chat already. So thanks everybody for that. So in terms of just kind of where we are on the agenda, we are in session 8. This is our last session of the day, and we're going to be talking about state management reviews. We have 2 sessions left tomorrow, so we are definitely in the home stretch of our virtual winter meeting to close out 2020. So as it says on the screen, send us a chat, tell us who you are, who you work with, and that'll help us keep track of who is here and participating in today's session. All right, so I am very fortunate that for today's session, I have a co-facilitator. We have Scott Gearing from the Office of Program Oversight, Office of Safety and Oversight. He's a Director of Program Oversight at FTA. If you were with us back in the summer, we did a technical session on on state management reviews and the transition to virtual state management reviews. And at that point in time, things were just starting to come together. We're a couple more months down the road. And I know in Virginia, we were scheduled to have had our SMR already earlier this year. And now we're moving into this virtual format, completing our package back to FTA and looking forward to our virtual visit sometime early next year. I will say that we were a little apprehensive going into that process, but thus far it's been, the consultants have been fantastic to work with, and it has been really quite seamless so far. So looking forward to how that process goes. So before I turn it over to Scott, I'm going to just say we're here for an hour, and this session is going to be what you guys make of it. This is our chance, and this group is never really shy. But it's our chance to ask questions and to have a discussion amongst the states with FTA about our state management reviews, about this virtual process that we're going through here in 2020, going into 2021. And so this session is going to be what you guys make out of it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott for some opening comments.
Great, thank you. Richard, thank you for inviting me back, and Jennifer, happy to be doing this with you again. I do want to introduce 2 people that have also joined from FTA. They're my 2 division chiefs. They're actually responsible for getting about 120% of the work of the office done. So we have 2 divisions in my office. One is the Division of Compliance Programs, and Hope Jensen is the division chief for for that group. Her group is responsible for managing all of our review programs. So the triennial state management, financial management oversight and procurement system review program. So it's her group that makes sure those all get done. And then the other division in my office is the Quality Assurance and Performance Analysis Division. And David Schilling is the division chief for that group. And his group does all of our data analytics. So they look at issues we have with findings, they identify trends, they maintain our O-Track system, which is how we, it's our system of record for maintaining and recording oversight data. They're also responsible for doing our oversight planning, right? So we have a coordinated effort within FTA to try and make sure that we're not overburdening recipients with oversight reviews. David and his office lead conversations with those responsible for doing state safety oversight audits, drug and alcohol audits, the civil rights reviews, and then obviously the reviews that we manage internally in my office, and just make sure that FTA is coordinating on the oversight that we are doing of our recipients. So I am very much looking forward to this conversation. Obviously, the virtual review format is a new endeavor for us, and it's one that as we've worked our way through it, I think we are identifying some benefits to the way we're doing this process that may work its way into future reviews. Even once we go back to doing in-person site visits, there may be some aspects of this that we keep going forward. And obviously the virtual review itself becomes a tool we can put in our toolbox to take advantage of in cases where it may be warranted. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer and Richard. I'm not sure how you want to start this conversation.
Helps if I unmute myself. So I think a good way to start is we've queued up a few poll questions. So we'll do that to kind of stimulate conversation. Richard, if you want to pull up the first poll question. So for this poll question, you can choose one, only one answer. This is just trying to get a feel for where everybody is in terms of the process. So we're looking to see if you were scheduled in FY20 and now are virtual in 21, if you were scheduled for 21 and now you're wondering what's going to happen next, or if you're scheduled for 22 and you're just going to be glad that hopefully everything else is going to be right with the world by the time your review comes up. So go ahead and submit your response to the poll question.
We are almost at 50%. Come on, folks. This is an anonymous poll, I promise you that.
We will not turn anything over to FTA.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Oh, I'm so kidding.
But I do think it helps us gauge the audience and kind of where we are in terms of process for the different states and the perspective on the state management reviews that we have based on what's going on right now. So how are we doing, Richard?
We're almost at 75%, 62 out of 84 people have answered. Are the others going to answer, or I think it is stalled here. Oh, no, there, it bumped to 75. So people are still submitting their answers. We're at about 1 minute and 40 seconds. Going once. I'm going to close it at 2 minutes. Going twice. Come on, we can get to a full 85. I guess not. 77%. I think that's good enough. I'm going to end this poll and show the results.
So of the folks participating in the call today, almost getting, I don't know, 43% should be in the process right now. We're scheduled for FY20 and will now be virtual in FY21. And then the rest, about 57%, are either waiting to see what happens next, or just glad that hopefully all of this is going to be behind us by the time they get there. So that's good and helps us, kind of get a feel for where folks are. I will go ahead and throw a question out there, for Scott, but I would like to point out, if you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself at any point, and we can call on folks, or you can put questions in the chat box. So please feel free to do that. Richard and I'll
Jennifer?
Yes.
Before you ask me that question, can I just respond to some of the points that were the data that was up there?
Absolutely.
Can you pull up that the poll again?
Let me see if I could.
Was it a once and done thing?
Oh, nope, there it is. Can you see it? Let me see it. Share the results. Can you see that?
Great. Right. So I just want to address the wonderings what will happen. So I'm going to apologize if I confuse anyone. We still manage to confuse ourselves internally at FTA with fiscal years, calendar years, and changes in review cycles. So we had a set of reviews that were scheduled for FY20. Those were postponed. We originally thought we were going to pick those up in October. Those site visits now won't happen until calendar year 21. Those, what were originally FY20 reviews, will now become FY21 reviews, and they will be complete throughout the remainder of the federal fiscal year. If you were scheduled for prior to COVID, if you were scheduled for an FY21 review, your review will now happen in FY22. If you were scheduled for an FY22 review, your review will now happen in FY23. And then 23 will become 24, and so on and so forth. We will eventually get back onto a 3-year schedule, but for the next couple of years, we will actually be on a 4-year schedule. And we did this for numerous reasons. One of them is the logistics of just the recipient, the challenges with recipients for doing these reviews. Also, FTA's internal capacity to manage the number of reviews that we'd be looking at if we tried to compress all of this to get back onto a 3-year schedule, and also the capacity of our contractors. So we have pushed everything out 1 year. So just take your original schedule and move it out 1 year.
Great, that's very, very helpful. Do you have, just looking at the question from Jamie in the chat, she was asking about all FY 2020 SMR reviews and the schedule. And how long do you envision things remaining virtual? And I know I'm asking an impossible question, but for those of us that are going through the virtual process now, is that the way you think things will go through calendar year 2020?
Through calendar year 2021, I would say
2021.
I would say at least through fiscal year 2021. I think it's, as you noted, it's an impossible question, so I don't really know how what the end part of the fiscal year will look like. For right now, we are planning to do all of the FY21s in a virtual format. Fiscal year 21 reviews in a virtual format.
So this is Jamie Ainsworth in Louisiana. A couple of things come to mind. Will the contractor's manual workbook continue to be updated annually, or will we kind of hold steady with the 2020 workbook that was published back in March?
So there will be an update coming to the contractor manual for when we pick up the FY now 21 site visits, because there will be some questions in there about how the impacts of COVID and looking at how recipients have been using CARES Act funds and ER funds. By and large, the review cutoff time was January 20th of 2020. So by and large, we'll be looking back prior to that time. But because we will be looking at a 4-year gap, we are going to look at how recipients have made use of CARES Act funds. So there will be an update to that. And then the next update to the review manual will come as we get prepared for the next review cycle, which will pick up in the fall of calendar year 21. I don't imagine that that next update will be a significant one.
Okay. In this virtual environment, do we expect that those training workshops that preceded the actual SMR will still continue in some format?
Yes. So, Jennifer, I'm going to put you on the spot. I think you mentioned that you have your SMR coming up. Has your contractor been in contact with you about doing some virtual training as a replacement for what was going to be the in-person training?
So our contractor has been great to work with. We're actually submitting our updates to our package this week, and she's been fantastic. We're working to schedule a workshop, and she's been very accommodating in breaking that. You know, when we in person, we would have done a couple of days, you know, kind of in a room outside of our office space, recognizing that's just not possible, and we've all got a little bit of, you know, video conference fatigue. She's working with us to break it down into smaller segments over, you know, maybe more days. So I just want to say that has been very accommodating as we've worked with our reviewer, and we are preparing for that site visit portion of the review.
Jennifer, Scott, can I just say one quick thing here before, as someone answers their phone? I like that. Before we continue, I want to encourage David Schilling and Hope Jensen as questions also come in. I know Scott is there, and he could also focus on what we're doing, but a lot of questions are going to be coming in on the chat that I really think could be answered pretty quickly. So if David and Hope wouldn't mind also monitoring the chat to see what questions are being asked. For example, the one from Frost from Washington State DOT says, does that mean our next SMR is going to be in 2024 instead of 2023 if they have an SMR this month? I assume the answer to that is, since they're on a 4-year cycle, the answer to that is yes. But well, I'm hoping David or someone will get back to them.
Hey, this is, I can read some of the chat box questions and for Scott, but I think some of these we've already gone over. So the first one from Jamie was, are all the FY20 SMR reviews postponed to FY21 and now virtual? I think Scott said yes to that.
No, right. I'm just saying, if you wouldn't mind typing out answers, because I can type out answers too, but I figured it'd just be as quick to have FTA just type out answers on some of these.
There is a question I'm not sure about. Will there be a dear colleague letter regarding the postponements?
I'm not sure what he's asking about, but we can clarify. Right. So sometimes FTA sends out dear colleague letters. I'm not sure if we're still doing that. There was communication that should have been sent out from the regional offices to all of their recipients regarding the scheduling changes for reviews. So if that didn't happen, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I can find out from the regional office what happened with that communication.
Yeah, Scott, I can confirm we did get communication from Region 3 on our review. So that we did get that direct, and it was specific to our SMR. So as we see more questions popping into the chat box, let's throw out poll question number 2. Richard, can you pull that up for us? All right, so our next question has to do about what kind of big concerns we have about our SMR, and there's a little lightheartedness in this as well. But, so it is just when you think about this, you can only select one answer. So is it adapting to the virtual review process, responding to questions regarding the CARES Act, or the usual suspects, the things we hear about in Scott's top 10 each time that he comes to a winter meeting and lets us know where they are on the review process. So if you want to go ahead and submit your answers to the poll question, Richard, you'll leave it open for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes.
I will. And also just to let you know, I had to resist putting in the above all category just to get people, because the question has to do with my biggest concern. So they all might be concerns, but I hope folks will rank them based on what they're, what's keeping them up at night. And the answer to that is everything does not fly.
Yeah, so I'm looking in the chat box, and I see a question from Sarah. She said that at her last SMR, they submitted all of their answers to the questions, then did a training, and then almost a year later, they did the in-person review. And is that still the format? I can tell you what our experience has been. We had submitted our answers in December of last year. Everything got put on hold. We got some feedback from our reviewer, and so we are updating our package, and we are resubmitting that right now. And we're already working with our reviewer on the training prior to the in-person review. So the format in the virtual environment feels actually feels very similar to what we've done in the past.
All right, we're about to come up on 2 minutes with this poll, and going once, going twice, sold. I'm going to share the results.
All right.
You all see that?
Yep. So I think 2020 has taught all of us to be very adaptable to changing circumstances, and it seems like our poll is consistent with that. That we're the stuff that's unique to 2020, the virtual review and the CARES Act. About 40% of us that's the biggest concern, and then 60% are concerned with the same things we're concerned about every time we go into an SMR. So that is interesting and reassuring in a challenging year like 2020. Scott, any thoughts on that?
So I'm curious to know if anyone's willing to just either put it in the chat or speak up what some of the concerns are regarding about responding to questions for the CARES Act. Like what are some of the challenges that you all have faced or issues?
All right, folks, now's the time. Can someone open their mic and help respond? Oh, I see Faraz from Washington State. You're first. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Scott. Good to see you. It's been a long time.
Likewise.
So we've been, or let me say it in a different way, we don't have as much guidance when it comes to CARES Act, and the way we're treating it as it's really flexible, and you could use it for any operating expense. And that's the same guidance we're giving our grantees. So his absence was a very firm, structured guidance from FDA. And by the way, that wasn't my selection. I'm not as worried about this one as the traditional procurement and other stuff. But we don't know what to expect. When we have an SMR and questions asked about the CARES, did we do it right? We're pressed to spend it as fast as possible, for example. And that's what we're doing. Is that okay? It's being done on the expense of other traditional like 5311 program. So all these questions are kind of brewing, and we don't have answers for them. We'll just go in with our own interpretation, assuming that FDA will show mercy because of this very reason.
Right. So FDA does have a website dedicated to, it's a website of FAQs from questions from recipients that have come in about how to use CARES Act ER funds. So hopefully between that and communication with the regional office, you've gotten answers to questions that you had or guidance that you needed about how to use the CARES Act and ER funds appropriately.
Again, Scott, it feels very flexible, which feels really good, and that's what we want. But again, it's just the anticipation of the unknown. We don't know what type of questions we're gonna get, and we're just worried. Are we doing it right? I'm aware of this website and we're following it. It's very helpful. But again, it's a new program and we are using it to the extent possible, and we're trying to spend it first. And this might trigger some concerns in the future. We just don't know what these concerns are.
Right. So I will tell you, one of the reasons that it's going to take us a little while to get the updated contractor manual out is that we have to internally decide, well, what do we do when we find issues that arise with use of CARES Act or ER funds, and how are we going to address those? So stay tuned for more information on that.
Thank you.
But I think there is an understanding that, you know, that this was a lot of money. It was pushed out very quickly. There was a lot of impetus to get it out and spent. And so we're going to have to figure out how we deal with issues when they arise. And we haven't completely figured that out yet.
Thank you, Scott.
Hey, Scott, I'll add to that and maybe throw it in a different direction and call on Brody. But, you know, in addition to CARES and, you know, the ER funding that, you know, that's kind of right in front of us, you know, this round of SMRs, we also have other new things that are going to show up in those SMRs maybe for the first time, like transit asset management and the safety plans. I know that's something that we've talked about in Virginia as we get ready for ours, and we actually had a lot of questions about our TAM plan from our reviewer. Brody, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I guess, yeah, we're having a lot of questions. I know from internally, we're trying to prepare for ours. We didn't get this notification that they're delayed, so thanks for the notification. So we've been collecting all the documents that we believe we need for the recipient information request. And one of the areas that we're trying to better understand, right, is the transit asset management plan, and wading through all those documents that are in there, making sure we have the right information and the right people assigned to those. So I guess those are our, some of those is in looking at the safety plans and how, the oversight of those was written. It really comes to the state for a lot of agencies that, are receiving direct 5307 dollars. And so we're trying to have a better understanding there of what that oversight relationship is for those safety plans as well.
So I don't have the final answer on the safety plans. I can tell you that what we were going to do, FTA had postponed the enforcement deadline for PTASP to December 31st. And so reviews that were happening after that time, our plan was to do a very light touch to ensure that the plan, if you were required to develop a plan, that you had developed a plan. It was not going to be the full evaluation that we would do in a normal year. Right, so it was, do you have it? Has it been approved? Hope, do you remember the questions that were proposed for PTASP? They're very high level, kind of cursory questions. I may have lost Hope. But I don't know if that's answering the question that you're asking, but when we first started with TAM, I would say when we implement PTASP, it'll be along that same lines, but it will be a lighter touch this year around.
Scott, what did you need from me?
Sorry, on the PTASP requirements, I was wondering if you remembered off the top of your head the types of questions that had been proposed for this initial look at the safety plans.
the questions we were going to ask are very basic. Have you developed a plan? Is it signed by your proper executive and approved by the board? And are you implementing it? Something like that. One brief question about subrecipients. You know, are you responsible for developing the plan with them? So it was 5 questions total. I think we may even be paring that down a little bit. There is no intent to go crazy with findings this first time around, given the conditions we're in. So, but we do want to understand the status of folks, where they are in developing their plans.
There's also, Scott, a question from Katie Patterson. She just wants to know about TAM and PTAS plans. How will they be reviewed? So I don't know if we have any updates on PTAS for them right at this time or not. I'm throwing that
So
to
I'm
you.
not quite sure. I'm not sure I understand the question about how they will be reviewed.
I think that the second part of Katie's question, and she may want to unmute her mic and address this as well, but is, you know, how going forward with the safety plans, the state has the role of writing the plans, but we don't necessarily have oversight of those plans and how they're implemented going forward by the transit agencies. So I don't know if Katie wants to unmute and elaborate on that.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. This is Katie. That was sort of, I didn't probably word it as well, but, you know, one thing with it, you know, going through a triennial or CSR, you know, or not CSR, SMR. But then, yeah, second, we've written a lot of plans for our sub. You know, they've sort of curtailed it a little for themselves. And, you know, they've signed it and it's executed and everything, but then it feels kind of weird to sort of judge on, or how is it going to be in 2 or 3 years down the road when we're not really overseeing it, unlike the TAM plan, which we, you know, sort of oversee for the state. So that was just sort of my question.
Okay. So I'm not sure I have a good answer for you at this point. I'm going to apologize. I've been trying to get some information because there's been some talk in FTA about further extending the enforcement deadline for PTAS, and I was trying to figure out if that had actually happened.
Got it.
So it has happened. The FTA has extended the enforcement date for PTAS out until July 21st of 2021. So that will mean that as part of our FY20 reviews, we are not going to be looking at, or sorry, the FY21 reviews, we're not going to be looking at the PTAS requirement. We may still ask a question about where you are with that and how the plan is coming along, but it will not be part of the reviews for FY21. In terms of your specific question, I'm going to need to take that back to my colleagues in the safety office and have a discussion with them about expectations for the oversight going forward. So I apologize, but I'm going to have to get back to you all on this one.
Okay, so it's a good time if you have topics or if you have questions to put those into the chat. I actually have a question about our review, and I'll throw it out there to not only to FTA but to the states as well. This is our first SMR since we've had our state-supported intercity bus service. So we've gotten a lot of questions from our reviewer about our intercity bus program and how that works. And I'll throw it out to the states, and just folks can feel free to unmute their mics. I would love some feedback from other states that do have a state supported or a state contracted intercity bus program.
Hey, Jen, this is Don. We've been doing it forever, and we really haven't had a problem. So I'm a little unsure about what the real question is about. What are the types of questions you're getting?
We're actually getting a number of questions about how we've accounted for our intercity bus and our TAM plan. And we do it as basically a contract service. So we don't have any capital assets that we've acquired for intercity bus. So that's one question I know that we've had, and there were a couple others about the contracting process, but it's the first time through for us, and I know our regional office will periodically ask us questions about what we're doing. So not 100% sure what to expect.
So, it's gone pretty smoothly for us. We found that the main things that we feel like we get questioned on the most and are able to provide are making sure that you have that in-kind match valuation letter. And let me see. I'm trying to say, we really frankly haven't had, like I said, much of a hiccup on anything, but if you have something more specific, we're more than happy to chat more about it.
Yeah, and you guys have been tremendously helpful to us as we've started this service, and so we will definitely reach out to you guys with some follow-up.
And I just saw what Ian threw in the chat, and that does come up. One of the things that comes up for us is that because we go out on a bid basis, and we bid out all the different routes. We have our 15% allocated to the program, but in a given year, we may not spend 15%. And so, but every time we've just been able to point to that and say, no, look, we still have this all in the right bucket. And just because we haven't spent all of it down, by the time we close out that 5311 grant, we will have spent that required 15%.
I think Ian should open up his mic and talk a little bit about what's happening in Wisconsin.
Thanks, Richard. Really appreciate that. From our experience, the questions around intercity bus have been, relatively straightforward. Something that, and I put this in the chat. They'll look to determine that you've spent 15% of your grant, 5311 grant on intercity bus program. If you didn't, then you have to demonstrate that, from the governor, demonstrating needs are met through a consultation process. And, for us, back to the 15%, we're very close to that number every year. And so sometimes we've had a situation where, upfront at the beginning of the year, we budgeted, slightly over 15%, but then for some reason, maybe revenues came in a little bit higher, so our expenditure was slightly under, and just kind of, making sure that we kind of have everything tracked appropriately around that. And then, I second Don's comment around the in-kind match, just making sure that you have, solid documentation around, what unsubsidized mileage is going to be using to help subsidize other mileage. So, apart from that, I think it's, I'll tell you not to worry too much, and then I guess you can, yell at me after you've had the review and it was terrible. So I didn't find it to be too burdensome, to be honest.
Thank you both. I think it's just something new to us, and that's why we're just a little apprehensive.
Yeah, so I would say just generally, when we revised the contractor manual a couple of years ago, we tried to make it more of a, I called it at the time the review guide for dummies, right? So if you didn't really know anything about the review process or the requirements, you could go through that guide and follow it, and you would know exactly what the contractors would be looking for and how they would be looking for it. And our thought was, well, if you wanted to at an agency, and you could take and use this and do your own internal review, and you should come up with the same answers that the contractor would. So I would say that if there is anything that is new for you, right, whether it's intercity bus or, I don't know, charter bus or school bus or whatever it might be, if you've got something new that's happening, see what we say in the instructions to our reviewers and the instructions for how they're to go about determining compliance. And of course, feel free to reach out to me or your contractor or the regional office if you've got questions about what they're going to be looking for or how they're going to be looking at it.
Thanks. That's really helpful. So let's open it up. Questions for anybody? It's very quiet in the chat. Richard will call on people.
Jennifer, I have a couple updates. This is David.
David, go ahead.
I'm sad that no one's asked about the new O-Track system. Richard, that was usually what you were going to ask, right?
What's wrong with people? I don't understand them.
So I just have a quick update on that. We do have an FAQ page out on our website where this information's there. We still haven't implemented it internally. So we're hoping to go live with the new system sometime this spring, knock on wood. And, the plan is still to roll that out to our recipients to, improve that transparency. So we're still looking at potentially rolling that out in the FY22, so October 1st. So what that means for the states is what you'll be able to see in the new system, you'll be able to go in and see your past final reports all in one place. You'll be able to upload your RER documentation once this goes live for you in the system. So instead of going to your contractor FTP site, you could actually, all that documentation will be in different folders in the system. You'll also be able to submit your corrective actions and view and download, as I mentioned, your oversight reports. So we're hoping that goes live in FY22. We're still trying to get it live internally, and it's very similar to TRAMS. It's on the same platform. I know some of you guys have already kind of had a sneak peek in one of our two meetings we had, I think over a year ago now, when we got our focus groups. So I will put the website, the FAQ website, in the chat box for you guys.
Right, so there are some questions coming in about if the system has been shared broadly. So the system is not live yet for anyone. We will roll it out first internally to FTA. It is called OTRAK, O-T-R-A-K. It stands for Oversight Tracking System, and it is FTA's system of record for oversight data. We have had this system for, it's almost 20 years now that FTA has had OTRAK. We call it a Frankenstein system because it's just been added onto over the years. This is its first major overhaul in that time. And we decided to take the opportunity to completely rethink what that system was capable of doing. And part of that was opening it up to recipients so that they could have access to their oversight record. As David said, they could submit documentation to FTA, whether that be for the information request or to close out corrective actions and findings, but also to monitor the status of those. Right, so we'd often heard that sometimes information is submitted to FTA and you have no idea what happened to it. So you'll be able to get confirmation that we received information for corrective actions, and you'll be able to see the status of those and what the decision on them was. So in terms of sharing it with the broader recipient community, we did do focus groups. Gosh, what are we going on? 2 years, David? A year and a half ago?
It was last year around this time, right? It was in the fall.
Right. It was before 2020, so it was about 10 years ago. And we do have a plan to come back out to recipients for both more engagement and to do extensive training before the system goes live. And once we do go live, there will be contractor support. So your review contractors will be able to provide technical assistance to you in terms of how to submit information for the RIR or submit corrective action documentation.
Yeah, our plan is if we do go live for recipients next fiscal year, the big rollout for training is going to be this summer. So we will put a training plan together and come back and present that to you guys and let you know how to get trained on it. No, so I had one other thing, Richard, before, at least in my shop. We really appreciate, I know we worked, this might have been now 2 years ago, with Richard on developing a survey that after you have your state management review, you're supposed to fill out. We did actually share a lot of the information with our regions and some of our contractors. But we didn't share it directly, but some of the input we used in trying to improve some of our contractor manual, et cetera. So Richard, we probably still need to work, but we would love to keep that going. We love to get that information and get that feedback from the states.
Well, that survey is still live on our MTAP website. It's just now not geared. I assume nothing has changed. The questions should still stay the same, and we shouldn't focus them on virtual versus in person. Correct.
We might be able to add maybe a couple questions regarding how the virtual one went, in regards. So reach out.
Yes, we should definitely talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, but thank you. Now we just need to have the review so we can get the feedback, right? Great. That's all I have. Thanks, everyone.
All right, David, I think there's a question in the chat from Sarah that you might be able to answer while we pull up our last poll question. So Richard, can you pull up our last poll question? All right, so again, a little bit of a lighthearted poll question. Which of the following statements best applies to you? And you can only choose one. If my next SMR is virtual, you can either say, bring it on. 2020 has shown me we can handle anything, even over Zoom. Second choice is, I'm not ready for it, either virtually or in person, or I'd rather not, and I'll wait and see, wait so that we can meet in person, even if it means waiting for another year. So a little lighthearted question, but we'll leave that open for the next minute and a half or so. Other questions for the chat box? I don't not seeing anything pop up, but feel free to unmute your mic or let us know if you have a question.
I have a question.
Sure, for us, go ahead.
And it's not SMR related per se, but it's more of compliance questions. So FDA is switching to virtual SMRs and trainer reviews. We, in our turn for our site visits, we're also doing the same thing. So we switched to doing site visits virtually. The question is coming down to, how do you inspect the bus? We cannot be in the field. We're not doing any inspection at the moment. We put everything on hold. An idea came up is we can do video streaming and have people, kick the tire, take the lift up and down, start the bus, and then we would record it. However, there was no feedback from FDA on whether this would be an acceptable method to show compliance. Should we try to use it and then see what happened, or should we just sit on a backlog and sometime in the future try to catch up? Is there any insight on this, Scott? I don't know if anybody asked this question.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how not to get myself in a huge amount of trouble over something. So FDA doesn't dictate how states do oversight of their subrecipients, right? So we leave that up to you to figure out. What we care about is that oversight is done and that issues are addressed when they have been found. FTA made a decision this year in light of COVID-19 and everything that we would need to do to assist our recipients in responding to COVID and supporting their communities, to move the reviews into a virtual format. And we decided that there were certain things that we could not do virtually because they would be, either impossible or they would be too much of an imposition on the recipient. And one of those was physical inspections of FTA funded assets, right? So equipment, facilities, vehicles. And so for the FY20 reviews, for those of you who do have them, you'll notice that that is not part of the review. So I would have a hard time, this is now just me speaking, right? So I would have a hard time imagining that we would come back and fault you for doing what FTA itself is doing in a virtual environment. Right, so we are still asking questions about maintenance of vehicles, about how they're ensuring their accessibility, and same with assets and facilities, but we're not doing the physical inspection.
Thank you, Scott. I think between the lines, I got what I need.
All right, so Richard has shared our poll results. So I love this. Let's 73% of you said bring it on. So I think again, 2020 has taught us to be really adaptable, and I think you know, I think we're all rising to the occasion. So I don't see anything else popping up in chat. I'm gonna throw the call out there again for questions. I know, Scott, from our perspective, I think when we talked back in the summer, I don't know if it was the summer or if it was last winter in Santa Fe, but the change in perspective on the subrecipient, I know there were a couple of other comments in the chat about the subrecipient reviews, and I do recall very clearly that you guys have communicated that you're looking at how the state is overseeing the subrecipients, not trying to go in and find out if the subrecipients might have any particular issues. That's something that you know, I think it's good for us from the state perspective to remember. I know Kristen's done a lot in Iowa with virtual compliance reviews of her subrecipients. Is there any advice on that for us in preparing for our reviews that maybe that you guys are looking for in particular, and how we're overseeing those subrecipients and how that's going to be looked at in this round of reviews?
Yeah, so we are doing, we are looking at the state's oversight of subrecipients as part of the virtual review process, and there will be some form of verification with subrecipients as we would have normally done in a regular site visit. But you know, you talked about sort of the mindset shift, and our universe of contractors that do oversight reviews is actually a relatively small, tight-knit group, right? And many of them have been doing these reviews for us for a very long time. And so sometimes it's difficult to change old habits. But what we tried to, and still continue to try to reinforce with in our review process is that, as I had just mentioned, it's up to the state to do the oversight. And you were correct, we are not out there to verify the compliance of the subrecipient. We're out there to verify whether or not you have an effective oversight process in place. And so our instructions have been that our oversight, our subrecipient oversight should focus on those subrecipients where you have done oversight recently. And they should be looking at the same things that you looked at. So if you come back and tell me that, you know, you looked at a subrecipient in, I don't know, somewhere out in, I don't know, in the Roanoke area, and you looked at this procurement and you determined that this procurement was, that there were no deficiencies in it, well, we should go back, look at that procurement and also find no deficiencies in it. And the issue is if we do find something, well, that means is that there might be an issue with the process that you have to oversee the subrecipient, right? And so that's really how we've tried to refocus it. So I don't think there is anything to do to get prepared for it. I think the preparation is all in the actions that were taken prior to the review. And I think that's the case for almost everything in our reviews, is that by year 3, it's too late. I mean, there are some issues that can be fixed, but by and large, it has to do with actions that were taken over the prior 3 years.
Hey, Jen, I can chime in a little bit too. This is Kristen from the Iowa DOT, and we are in the midst of our SMR prep. We just submitted our supplemental RIR last Friday, which if you don't know, a year ago, we, for our supposed FY20 review, submitted our RIR, request for information or whatever that stands for. And because of the delay, because of COVID, we didn't, do anything with that over the past year. And so now the contractors have gone through our original responses and had a few follow-up areas for us to respond to with more documentation because they're going to be virtual this year. So we supplied more information and documents for them because they won't be on site. And as for the subrecipient review or oversight portion, this doesn't feel any different to me than any other review of the past 3 years or 3 years prior. To me, we've always had to be on top of our subrecipients, and they've always looked into that and made sure that we're overseeing them properly. And if not, we make changes and move on and learn from it. So it's nothing, it doesn't feel any different to me than before. So I think this process so far has gone pretty smoothly. We have really friendly reviewers thus far. So I think it's going to work well, and we'll see how it goes with the virtual meetings here in February or whenever they're scheduled.
Yep, I feel the same way, Kristen. Thank you for chiming in. All right, we're getting very close to 4 o'clock. Richard, do we want to? I think we've got a couple of additional slides of business items, but as we wrap up and close out, and I apologize, my child just got home from school, so it's about to get a lot noisier in my house. I just want to thank.
Do we want to take Caitlin's question real quickly? Regarding. We usually take FTA to visit a couple of our subrecipients as part of the SMR. Will that still be part of the virtual review, and we would just have the subrecipient join virtually, or will that piece be done differently this year?
So yes, subrecipient oversight will still be part of the SMR. It will be done virtually. And so as we would have, whether it's teleconference or video conference with the recipients, we would do the same. That subrecipient site visit would be moved to a similar virtual format that the state virtual site visit is taking place in.
Thanks, Richard.
Alrighty.
Thanks for catching that one.
So there's a question above. I can't answer it, but it's from Graham. It's about the FEMA and matching. And this is out of my area of expertise. So what I would encourage you to do is reach out to the regional office, whoever your point of contact is, and discuss that with them. I think the answer is no, but I'm not 100% sure on this. So don't take my answer, talk to the regional office. Okay, which regional office is it? Okay. So could you do me a favor? Could you send me, Graham, could you send me an email with the question, and I'm gonna forward it to my colleagues internally at headquarters and also to Region 9.
That's why we have Scott on the phone on Zoom.
Well, definitely. Well, thank you, Scott and David and Hope and the rest of the folks from FTA. This is, as always, has been really, really helpful, and just appreciate you guys always being willing to come join us. And you're always very gracious as we throw a bunch of random questions at you, but we very much appreciate it as always.
As you noted before, we've almost done with 2020. We can handle anything now. So keep the questions coming. I enjoy the lively conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so as we wrap up, just want to thank ASHTO's premier and capital sponsors, and in particular, I want to make sure we give a real strong shout out to our meeting sponsors, Route Match by Uber and Panther International. They stand by us every year, whether we are sitting at home or meeting someplace beautiful like Santa Fe last year. So it's a wrap. That's it for today. We will kick off tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern for session 9. That's construction management oversight. And Caitlin McClanahan from Tennessee is your moderator. I'll kick off the session in the morning. We'll start right at 11. So thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Safe.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Have a good night.